Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Pait Group Joy of SharePoint webinar. So glad you could make it today. I'm coming to you from the frozen wasteland of Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's 15 degrees outside. Oh my goodness. Richard, how's Texas?
It's definitely not 15 degrees out here. It's starting to cool down a little bit, but I think we're faring a little bit better weather-wise than you are at the moment, Joy.
Yeah, it's a little chilly, but that's okay. We've got Microsoft 365 to keep us warm, right?
That's right.
We're going to do a recap today. The release of features and functionality in Microsoft 365 for the last, let's be honest, year has been breakneck. And the amount of meetings I think we've all been in recently has also been breakneck. So to help you keep up with everything that's going on in Microsoft 365 and to kind of lessen the computer screen fatigue, we're going to dial things back just a little bit. We're going to go to a monthly cadence where we come in, welcome you into our webinar, and we talk through the big announcements that have come in since the last time we got together. So this is going to be our February recap today. If you've never joined us before, thank you so much for being here. My name is Joy Apple. I'm a modern workplace strategist and Microsoft MVP. I work at Pait Group, and I get to help customers and clients and folks out on social media figure out what the heck to do with this thing we call Microsoft 365, how to get to a modern workplace from file shares, Google Docs, Google Drive, or even old versions of SharePoint 2010, 2013, just to name a few. I will say this is most definitely the most exciting time to be working with Microsoft products and technologies. It's so exciting to see the capabilities that have come on board month by month. 5 years ago, we wouldn't have dreamed of doing some of the stuff we can do today. So it's really exciting. I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Richard Calderon. He's my workplace twin at Pait Group. Richard, how is it?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. As Joy mentioned, we have similar roles at the Pait Group. So I'm also a modern workplace strategist. And, we just love talking about all things Microsoft 365, learning about things constantly as the changes are coming in. And then, of course, doing everything we can possibly to try to help our customers and you understand what those changes are, how they affect you, how they affect your business, and most importantly, how can they bring value to you and your organization. So that's the reason why we want to pull these webinars together. And so, as Joy mentioned, we're going with kind of a new cadence now, and hopefully little bite-sized consumable chunks of change that we can talk about rather than kind of the flood of information that tends to come out on the internet all the time. So again, thanks for taking some time out of your day for joining us. Joy, what are we going to run down today in this webinar?
Well, we've got exciting stuff. So approvals in Teams is here. Teams is our hub for teamwork, right? So what better way to help us consolidate all the places we have to go than bringing approvals right to where we already are. So I'm super excited about this.
Yeah.
Task publishing for our Firstline workers. Sometimes we hear it referred to frontline workers, those essential workers that are out there day in and day out. Microsoft is really doing a lot to make it easier for our Firstline workers to get to their mission critical information. So we're going to take a look at that. The Microsoft Lists mobile app. Cool beans. It's so slick.
Cool.
We try to streamline the way we give information to you, but keep an eye out on social because we do take snippets of this information and do a little bit deeper dive and sharing information with you out there. The List mobile app is super cool. I'm really blown away with how much thought they put into it. Okay, see, I'm excited. So I'm gonna take a step back. Forms. Richard, when Forms first came out, what was your first thought?
It seemed pretty basic. It was one of those capabilities that, if I remember correctly, kind of came along for the ride from the education side of the house for Microsoft Cloud. And, obviously extremely useful for being able to set up quizzes, et cetera, and kind of gathering information from teachers to students, or I should say from the students to the teachers. And so, I've always thought of it as it's a great utility. It's a great tool to have kind of in your toolbox, but it's really been interesting to watch it continue to evolve over time. So yeah, so as everybody knows, it's certainly one of our go-to tools that we use pretty regularly.
And it's more and more people ask, well, hey, we want to use forms. Can we use it with all these other tools? So the capabilities are growing. And here recently, they have released the ability to collect responses from specific users. Before, you could put it out into the world and anonymous folks outside of your organization could respond. That's how we do our poll every webinar. Now they're taking that scope and they're bringing it in to look specifically at people with usernames and passwords inside the organization or specific groups. So we're just going to take a snapshot peek at that.
Yep.
Breakout rooms in Teams meetings. There's been a lot of buzz about that. I haven't used one yet in a meeting because I'm usually only in a meeting with 2 or 3 or 5 people. But I got to admit, I know, Richard, you had the button show up in Teams before I did.
Yeah.
And I was a little jealous. I was like, why? But it's here. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that is, what it can do for us, and why we might use that inside, especially in a larger meeting. And then we just want to highlight that Teams is bringing more capabilities for pop-out capability. So apps can pop out. Not every single one of them. I went through and looked at the apps that I have in Teams, and I made a note of which ones pop out, which ones don't.
Yeah.
So we now have some apps that can pop out along with chat and meetings.
Cool.
But before we do that, I think we have a poll.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So as always, we just like to get a little bit of information from you, just, understanding who's who in the room, and want to get a little bit of feedback from you just based on, again, all the changes that are going on in the cloud these days. So if you would find this link in the Q&A panel of the window, and then if you would just go ahead and fill that out, we certainly would appreciate it. Just a couple of quick questions here for everybody, always, again, who's in the audience today. And then a couple things we were interested in understanding. I'll flip over to responses here at the moment. Number one is just, again, we keep talking about all of what's new in Microsoft 365. And although we're going to a monthly pace of change, you definitely can take a look and see sometimes daily there are numbers of changes that you'll see, like in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center, the Message Center. And sometimes it almost seems like multiple changes are occurring in a single day. So there's a lot going on out there, obviously, right now. So just interested to know how your organization is really adapting to those changes and the pace of that change. Are you doing everything you can to stay on top and keep your users informed? I know, Joy, that I hear from some of my customers, you probably do too, that sometimes, the IT team will just hear about the change because one of their people has mentioned, like, hey, something's shown up and I'm not clear about that, or, can you help me understand how come this is different now? And so again, sometimes it's just hard to keep up. And then in other cases, let's be perfectly honest, because it is challenging, sometimes maybe you just sort of throw your hands up in the air because it's a little bit too fast, too much, too soon. So just kind of interested to understand that from each of your perspective. And then a little bit of a teaser. We didn't really talk about this in our kind of agenda items here, but there was some big announcement, I think, of some sorts that occurred this past week. And just interested to know if anybody had really heard much about this just yet. So let's bounce over to the responses. We've got about 9 responses coming in. Thank you so much. As always, we've got a good mix of folks here in the room, so thank you. And in terms of adapting to the pace of change, it looks like, again, there's a pretty good blend between those that are doing their best to stay on top, and especially when it does, in fact, impact your users. That's obviously really, really important. Again, Microsoft does a pretty good job of trying to help you understand that in the Microsoft 365 Message Center when they feel like it's something that's going to, affect people, and they want you to make sure that you take action or give notification. And then, good to hear also. There are certainly some people I know that there's so much coming in at one time. Sometimes you just hear about it from your end users. And then in terms of the announcements, unsurprisingly, there's some folks that are just, on the, hey, I try to just shelter out from all the news that's going on today. I don't blame you, quite honestly. I wish that I could do that sometimes myself too. But, that is definitely part of our job, right, is to stay on top of things that are going on, especially in Microsoft technology, so that we can help you understand what we hear is going on. So good. Yeah, it looks like, from this chart here, it looks like a pretty even mix in terms of what is referred to as Microsoft Viva Microsoft's new employee engagement platform. Again, we'll just briefly talk about that here a little bit later. So some that are excited to hear about it, some that maybe have heard a little bit about it, and others that just haven't just yet. So again, thanks so much for responding to the poll, and feel free to just drop in an answer there if you're just jumping in at any point in time along the way.
All right, so I do want to mention too, those of you that said, it's hard to keep up. It truly, truly is. In fact, I try to take about an hour minimum every week and just sit down with the major change announcements in the admin center and just go through and see what they are. And some of them I'm like, nah, don't care. I don't care. I'm sorry, I don't care about what's happening in Excel. It's not my app. But today I was just taking a sneak peek, and they did mention that Share to Teams from Outlook is going to start rolling out mid-March.
Yes.
Ooh, that's exciting. Didn't have time to make a slide because that was literally 10 minutes before I joined this webinar. But I'm excited. Okay, so back to why we're here. Approvals in Teams. Sweet. So first off, you can do that as an app over on your left rail. If you don't see that on your left rail, it's because you haven't put it there yet. So if you go to the ellipsis that's on your left rail, it's in that screenshot, you'll see the apps that you can add into Teams. Approvals is there, and you just click on it and it gives you one-stop shopping for your approvals in Teams. Right now it's pretty basic. If you want to flip over to the next slide real quick. I have a sudden fear that I didn't put these in order. I didn't, but that's okay. Right now it is pretty basic, but for those of you that are developers, citizen developers, or you've got a buddy that's a developer, Power Automate can be used to get your approvals that you've already got out there and add a step so that they can come through your Teams app. So what we have in the app is basic right now. Richard, he's nodding his head in the background. We've kind of had a little bit of a conversation about this.
Yeah.
But we have capabilities to add in what we need. Because it may be Microsoft leaves it basic and just leaves it to us to customize as we want it. One thing I did notice that's interesting about approvals in Teams is if I want to attach a document out of the box, it's got to be something that I've synced to my desktop. Somehow, some way, my device, if that makes sense. If you're not syncing content using the OneDrive sync tool, you might want to start doing that to make it easy to get to that content, because we don't want to duplicate for sure, right? One of the beautiful things about SharePoint and Teams document management is having a single version of the truth, centralized document management. But you'll notice on our next slide that we do have, I'm thinking out the breakout. This is what happens when I don't drive my own slides.
No worries.
And I can't because we're having an ice storm and I can't get to my co-work spot with good Wi-Fi today. Yeah. But through using the approvals inside of Teams, you do have that streamlined ability to bring all that other information into one spot, and then to also create those approvals from Teams and send it out to the folks that you're collaborating with the most. I really see this as a big step towards really turning Teams into that centralized place to get all of our, I want to say tasks, but that's not the right word, just our daily activities handled in one place. I've enjoyed playing with it. Richard sent me the day he found it in Teams. He sent me an approval in Teams through the app. So we've been playing with it internally. We've got a good use case for using it to route some of our sales stuff through official approval channels instead of just, one-off chat-based communication. So I encourage you to go out there, take a look at it, start playing with it, get your guinea pigs lined up. Really good use case for streamlining stuff inside of Microsoft Teams.
I am going to go back a slide just because we glossed over one bit of Joy's humor, which I love here, is that, business class airfare to Tahiti, obviously, if you need to put that request in for your manager, you now have a very simple streamlined app inside of Teams to be able to do so, right? Don't know whether you're going to get that approved or not, but nonetheless, you have the ability to do that now all through the Teams application. I
think I would be more productive in Tahiti.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Good or bad Wi-Fi connectivity at all, whatever, but still,
I'm just
be out there in
saying.
Tahiti.
Yeah. Firstline workers. Has anyone been able to go out on social media anywhere and look at content for Teams and Microsoft's focus on productivity and not see either firstline or frontline workers? Mm-hmm. Right? It's out there, and I love the focus, the maybe I should say the refocus on those frontline workers. I'm curious. This was not part of our poll, and I wasn't planning to ask this question until now. But anyone here before they got into IT, were you a first line or a frontline worker? I was. I refer to as my time in retail hell, right? But I did it for many, many years. I was the person standing at a cash register, helping people buy things. And those people haven't had a face inside of this productivity suite just until the last year. So that's definitely a silver lining for the pandemic, is it's giving us a chance to give those folks the tools they need. Task publishing for first-line workers is absolutely that. So at the corporate or regional level, tasks can be created for locations, storefronts, bakeries, restaurants, whatever that may be. And then once that big task list gets pushed down to that local level, a manager has the ability to go in and say, oh, okay, well, Joy's going to set up the new display in the window this week, so I'm going to put these tasks to her. Richard, he's going to be in charge of rearranging our point of sale area, so these tasks go to Richard. So they go down to the individual. So we go from corporate or regional to local store, let's say, just to simplify, to the individual employees, and then they get to it on their mobile device. Mm-hmm. Simple.
Pretty
easy.
Cool. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Yeah, this is something that Microsoft had, at least they had mentioned when they were early on talking about the new Tasks app inside of Microsoft Teams. And so again, for most of you that know, there is such a thing now as a Tasks app in Teams. It's going through a little bit of an identity crisis at the moment. Still isn't kind of officially landed as just simply tasks. Right now it's called Tasks by To-Do and Planner, but nonetheless it's an app that you can put into the left rail, just like the Approvals app you can in Teams. So if you go and you do a search inside of the App Store in Teams, make sure you're doing a search for Tasks by To-Do and Planner. It'll just show up. And then from there, once you have the Tasks app, you have the ability to be able to set this up to do the tasks publishing. And I believe we're going to carve off a whole separate webinar conversation really specifically on this topic, because I tested it out a little bit myself. I gave a little bit of a kind of a once around, and there's a little bit of setup you have to do at the moment just to kind of get it working. But I do have to say that once it is in fact working, just as Joy mentioned, it's actually pretty straightforward to be able to create those tasks. Again, if you're thinking of it from a corporate or a manager level, and then being able to publish those out towards other teams, where then team members on those teams can now actually view and take action on those tasks. Pretty cool. Microsoft did a really good job on that. So yeah, we're going to carve that into its own separate topic webinar.
Awesome. All right, Microsoft Lists mobile app. If you haven't downloaded this yet, after the webinar, go do it, right? Even if you don't have a lot of lists that you're working with. And it's funny, we've seen all the memes out there that people at Microsoft and in the community have made of like pulling the list icon off of like a monster and it's SharePoint, right? Yes, these are SharePoint lists, but over the, how long has SharePoint been around now? We're not going to add that up. That would make me feel too old. But many years that SharePoint's been around, we kind of lost track of lists because document management is really where it hurts the most for most of us, because we've got duplication everywhere. Well, lists give you the ability to take that content and put it in a live spreadsheet. And I'm just going to take a moment to point out, not everyone speaks in spreadsheet. I'm one of those people that doesn't. So if you turn Joy loose inside of a very fancy Excel spreadsheet that you put a lot of pain and suffering to, and you ask her to do stuff, she's probably going to break it. Now you're hoping that you've at least put that spreadsheet in SharePoint somewhere so you can roll back to the version before Joy got into it. Imagine a world where you can have that spreadsheet and every row has a version. Oh, that's a list, right? You've got your security around it. You've got a spreadsheet that's loading live. Joy can be editing her pieces while Richard and Stacy are editing their pieces through rows. Every one of those is version controlled, pretty powerful. Lists comes in and has made it even more powerful. The mobile app has streamlined the ability to make that mobile friendly. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you can put it in your pocket. So I put the little video here just because we all know demos don't always work beautifully when we're trying to connect a mobile device. So you notice your item names are staying static, but the metadata scrolls.
It's pretty slick.
It really is. It really is. In fact, this demo was from when it was announced at Ignite, right? I totally stole this from Microsoft. So the first thing I did when I downloaded the mobile app was I went to see if it really did that. It does, right? I just wanted to test it.
Yeah.
Very clean interface. And I love the fact that if you go and you click on one of those items in the list, one of the things that you can do is add an image from the camera on your phone, or you can upload as an attachment from your photo library. Right?
Yeah, so
go ahead.
I was just going to say to that feature, just like the previous one we just talked about, where tasks publishing is another one of those capabilities that's really empowering those first-line, frontline workers. Something like the ability to take a picture from your phone and then be able to automatically attach that to these list items inside of Microsoft Lists. Again, just another one of those benefits that countless number of use cases from a first line worker perspective that you can think of to be able to do that. So, you know, there's a lot of benefit to lists generally, as Joy was mentioning, but in terms of the mobile lists app, other than the obvious that it's just, you know, all of your list data in your pocket essentially with you on the go, it really can, if you start thinking about it this way, really can unlock a number of those first line worker use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of folks that are coming up these days are, well, they're more familiar with using a mobile phone because I guess, let's be honest, we didn't grow up using them, right? We figured it out as the iPhone was released, right? Oh, wow, new shiny, we learned it. But we've got folks that, you know, I see toddlers being given an old cell phone to play with because it keeps them occupied.
Definitely.
Right? So having it go mobile quickly, I think, is very important the further we get into the future. And those built-in capabilities are fantastic. Think about one of those frontline workers having an issue. And they're like, oh, well, you know, there was a storm and the tree blew through and broke the glass. Take a picture, submit it immediately. Submit it with a high priority, right? It's just getting easier and easier for folks. So it's exciting to see that.
And since I was just thinking about this, Joy, I don't recall, do you know, is the Lists mobile app only for iOS at the moment, or is it also out there for Android?
Oh, I shall find out. I thought it was for both, but we're going to get to the bottom of that little mystery momentarily.
And whether it is or isn't at the moment, yeah, as you know, again, as Microsoft has really made it very, very plainly clear, their investment in being able to ensure that all of these different Microsoft 365 experiences are available, whether or not you're looking at them from a desktop or a tablet, or if it's from your mobile phone, they're obviously they're all in on doing that. So it's great to see how they're, again, releasing all these different experiences to Microsoft 365 in general, like Microsoft 365 lists, but then also, if not immediately, very quickly coming on board with the ability to have a mobile experience as well.
It looks like it should be out there, but I want to verify that. So we will circle back to that and give you a definitive answer not too much longer. I think it is, but I don't want to swear. And I mean, I'm an iPhone user because when I got my first smartphone for an employer years ago, iPhone's what they gave me. And I have noticed iPhone does tend to get those releases just a little bit faster than Android. Jeff is saying that he doesn't see it. Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe that is coming soon. So we can find out for you on a release date there.
Cool.
Yeah, we got this. Okay, this is super easy. This is something that is simple. A picture is worth 1,000 words. When you have your forms now in Microsoft Forms and you click the share button, one of your options now is to share and collect responses, I should say, from specific people in my organization. So for teachers, this rolled out first so they could get information from specific students, probably parents, or students in specific groups. Now this is out for business users as well. So specific users have to have a username and password, or groups, specific Microsoft 365 groups.
Yeah, very cool that they've made this available as well too. You know, again, kind of as we talked about at the beginning of the webinar, Forms has just slowly become more and more really widely used and widely adopted, at least by a lot of our customers at the very least. And it's really little things like this. I guess you consider this somewhat of a little change, but it's an important change nonetheless, that they enhance Microsoft Forms with that really just make it, again, that much more of a really robust solution. I know that recently, and again, this is before we started doing these What's New webinars, but when they added the simple ability to see how far along you are in the responses that you're giving. So if you've got a 25 question survey or questionnaire of some sorts, before you just kind of start taking it and go. But now in Forms, it's got this little progress bar that you can add as well that allows you as the person who's responding to just kind of get a visual sense of where am I in the entirety of this? Am I halfway done? Am I only just barely started, or am I almost done? And again, it's little bitty things like that I think that are just really cool. It really enhanced the tool.
I tend to think of Forms as the little app that could, right? Because it did, like you said earlier when we started out, it started so simple and very basic. But when you look around, more features are coming to it. And I think the simplicity, even though at first we kind of looked at it and dismissed it, the simplicity I think is what's drawing people to it. As we had someone mention in chat, we've got people using it for contact tracing, for COVID information forms, because it's so simple to get started, right? Pretty awesome. Breakout rooms, Teams meetings. This is something that I feel could take the virtual meeting and really bump it up to the next level. So what a breakout room does is it gives you the ability to have your large meetings and to break them into smaller, almost brainstorming sessions is how I typically start to think of it. So you could have 100 people in one meeting and then break them out into groups of 10 or 20 or 25. We did a sales, we can't call it a retreat because we all did it from the comfort of our own homes. But we did a big sales meeting. What was it? Not quite a year ago, spring-ish. And I could have seen this as being something where, even though we're a small group, we say, okay, we've got 3 or 4 changes we want to see. Let's break out into groups, huddle for 15, 20 minutes, really talk about our ideas of what we think would be the best way to do it, and then come back into the larger group. Say, these are our recommendations, discuss as a larger group.
Yeah.
So inside of the breakout rooms, the organizers can interact with each room, can send announcements like, hey, 30 minutes in, you've got 10 more to go, something like that. And when it's time to bring everybody together, can go through and close those breakout rooms. And they assign who goes where, so it's not just chaos having to do it all at once when things get going. Again, this came out of education. This came out of Teams education, which is really cool. A lot of times you see tools roll out to a business and then other industries get it, but this is the exact opposite. Education pioneered this for us. and now it's coming to corporate America. Every breakout room inside the meeting gets its own separate chat. If you flip to the next slide, we'll kind of see how that represents itself inside the chat pane in Teams. So that's accessible in your recent chat. You can kind of see what's going on. Room 2 or 3 can make an announcement out for everybody in chat. It's there, even persistent, just like chat is inside of our regular team meetings.
Very cool stuff.
Got a comment, our professors wanted this for their classes to break into groups. It's perfect. So you get your brainstorming sessions, you've got your, we always called them, when I was in the government world, we called them our tiger teams, right? Have one big meeting, break out into those tiger teams to really dive into something, and then come present those solutions to the larger audience. I love the concept. This is another simple, super simple one, just to make you aware. I know we still feel a little frustrated with Teams sometimes because Skype for Business let us pop out everything. Okay, everything, chat. I think that's all we had in Skype for Business, right? It's been a minute, but it was just meetings and chat.
Yeah.
But it took a little while for Teams to catch up to that. You can now work with your apps in multiple windows, and those can be persistent, right? You can open up your approvals and have that window docked on your 3rd or 5th monitor, and it can just sit over there out of the way. Tasks pops out, approvals, those individual chat conversations. Stacy and I, we probably chat a lot throughout just about any given day. That's one of those chats I kind of have sitting over on the side, so it's just there and accessible. So, you know, your usual suspects stay out there. Shifts pops out. Your Yammer communities will pop out. Why, Joy? You're thinking, why am I using Yammer communities? Because I've got that in Teams. Let's think about our, I'm going to say it correctly, Richard, Maca, our modern architecture, even though it's spelled Mocha. We want to take that stuff that's not teamwork, task-driven, that's more community, centers of learning, put that over in Yammer so we don't have that constant focus issue happening. So your Yammer communities can stay up, can pop out, can be on a screen. OneNote, Stream, and the Help app. Did you know there was a Help app inside of Teams? It's great. It's always kind of there, hidden at the very bottom in a little question mark symbol. If you click on that, that'll take you to a help area, but it's actually a whole app that's there. It's awesome. I encourage you, it's your homework. Check out the help app. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, definitely found myself popping out the tasks in Teams app out as soon as that came available. I was playing around with it just like you were doing, Joy, and it just realized pretty quickly that, oh, this is actually very useful to me. To be able to have my tasks, again, across To-Do and Planner all available to me, but then to be viewable either on a separate monitor or just a separate section of my window while I still have all the other different areas and Teams that I go in and out of regularly. That's a really useful tool for me to be able to have that as pop out. So yeah, pretty excited that that's available now.
When Christmas comes from Microsoft, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to, and this is literally, this is a wish list. I'm not saying this is happening. This is what Joy wants to happen. I'll be able to go and configure how I want Teams to start up. And it will be open Teams, tasks has popped out, and I don't know, I could see a couple of chats auto popping out would be useful.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But definitely I want to be able to pick the apps that I want to just start popped out. I think that would be pretty fantastic.
Guys, so Matt wants to know, how do I edit, work on, look at the Help app? Loves it.
I don't know that you can edit it. If you can, I haven't tried. Now I kind of want to go in and poke at it, but yeah, it's pretty fantastic. Now I will say one thing you can do with the Help app on those, I'm scared to try to share my screen because I don't want to freak out my Wi-Fi. I feel like it's been doing pretty good so far. But when you go into the help app, there are topics, training, what's new. You can get links to those, send them to people, share them with people. I kind of feel like this might be a good segue, though, into the last topic that wasn't on our rundown slide, because part of the help app is learning. So,
why is Elvis Presley doing a dance on this slide?
Because it's Viva, Microsoft Viva. Everybody dance. Okay, Matthew says, can we put a link to our help desk, support desk, or our phone number? Well, funny you should ask that question. And I don't know if you can customize the help app, but I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more. I've got an empty block this afternoon. That's what I'm going to find out. So, Viva, Microsoft Viva. If you have been purposely ignoring social media just because you're trying to focus, since, what was that, Thursday?
Yeah.
You may have missed this, but Microsoft has announced a brand new, employee engagement tool, combination of tools. I wanted to say an app, but it's not.
I think they were referring to it as a platform. Or a product, but yeah, a series of products on this platform.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff all rolled up in one. Well, that's what Teams is, right? It's a lot of stuff all rolled up in one. So Microsoft Viva is going to give you 4-in-1. I feel like that's an oversimplification. Mm-hmm. There's an area that's going to be called connections, an area called insights, learning, Matthew, talk about this, and topics. And these all kind of come together right inside of Teams, because Teams is our hub for teamwork, right? And let's be real. Microsoft's vision for Teams is that it becomes our service application delivery platform. That's a lot of words all rolled up into one, but it's where we go to get to just about everything we need any given day. And if we play our cards right, we're going to have Elvis dancing there 24/7. So it just gets better and better.
Teams is almost becoming to the point of, like, you almost think of it as your entire operating system in a way. There's lots of things you do in Windows, obviously, but you spend so much time in Teams now once your users get really, really embedded in that. And then again, as Microsoft's bringing more of these experiences to Teams, then it just becomes that much more, again, kind of feature rich and usable in that regard. So pretty excited about this announcement here. This slide that Joy put together here. Good old Clippy here, who we haven't seen, and how long has it been since we've seen Clippy? I think it's been a minute.
He grew a hair while he's been on
vacation. Hair here, yeah. Just giving you a little bit of, again, this is all such a new announcement that Microsoft is, slowly releasing more information about it. But the idea, again, behind all these different tools really kind of coming together into this single employee experience inside of Microsoft Teams. Again, we're going to talk a whole lot more about this, I'm sure, over the coming months and so forth. But just the fact that for so long now, really, the kind of the primary strategy and objective, I guess, for most organizations, whether you're a commercial org or a government agency, has been the focused on the people you serve or the people you offer a service or a product for. So your customers or the citizens or constituents of a particular county or state and what have you. That has been the focus really for most companies and organizations, been the focus on the customer. But kind of lo and behold, Microsoft kind of getting on the bandwagon now, realizing that, businesses are run by people. People are what actually make businesses function and thrive. And so it's the employee that you also need to equally, if sometimes maybe not more, spend time really trying to ensure that they have a really meaningful experience with the organization, and especially with all of the change that occurred in this past year, working from home and feeling disconnected and maybe feeling overworked and just not having a good sense of, is this ever going to end and how does that affect me in my job? the employee experience and being able to really ensure that you stay connected to others, have data and the ability to understand how you're doing, how you're personally doing, your well-being and your productivity, et cetera. Having those insights, and obviously training and learning and kind of continually understanding what's new, and not just how to, but why this matters to me. Those sets of capabilities, as well as, again, those of you who've heard us talk a little bit about Microsoft's really like heavy investments in the content services side with artificial intelligence around Syntex, with Project Syntex and SharePoint Syntex, Project Cortex, excuse me, and SharePoint Syntex, which sounds similar. But the ability to effectively allow the Microsoft Cloud and the artificial intelligence in the cloud to help you understand, gain better information from content that exists within your organization, and kind of bring that information to you rather than you having to necessarily always go search for it. That's the idea behind this entire set of services. So, you know, again, kind of a mouthful there, but when you look back at the previous slide, connections again is all about that. It's about connecting. You're going to see that really, I think, go hand in hand, would you say, Joy, with the release of the SharePoint Home app, the home site app inside of Teams.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Viva Insights is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we've got some licensing questions.
Okay, sure.
And, you know, yeah, there's going to be some additional cost to get everything. What I've seen reading around is that Viva will be part of F1E3 licensing, but, you know, there are 4 parts to Viva. I have heard that Community is the only one that's going to be fully usable if you're F1 or E3. And that fits into how Richard just mentioned. It's, dare I say, a rebranding of that home app. That might be an overstatement saying the word rebranding, but you know, he and I kind of did some close-up looking at some stuff yesterday, and it sure feels like that home app. So that would be the one that's going to be more fully usable if you're looking at F1 or E3 licensing. For other features and solutions that are going to require, like the syntax, workplace analytics, those are currently things that are going to be around the E5 level. And that's the workplace analytics, which I think you were just about to say this, is tied into the insights.
Yes.
And personally, I'm really excited to see that come online.
Yeah. Yeah, the my analytics piece, which I think just about everybody now has gotten some use or familiarity with. You probably are automatically getting these emails that kind of tell you some things about my analytics, kind of dashboard information. And maybe you're starting now also get these kind of daily Cortana emails that are telling you about some things that maybe you might want to check in on, or you might want to do for yourself, such as blocking focus time on your calendar. Really, really useful, actually, that this is you know, coming along and becoming such a regular part of everyday workflow. The workplace analytics service, which is kind of the overarching kind of Uber analytics service from into the actual workplace itself. That's something, again, as Joy was mentioning, definitely is going to require some additional licensing, and is all going to tie together into this Viva Insights as well, too. But the topics piece of it, I believe, because we were looking at this yesterday, the topics piece is what actually did go to general availability on the day of the announcement. So that was available as of Thursday. And I want to say, I'll double check again, but I think it's like a $5 a user a month additional licensing above whatever the licensing that is required to be able to then have Viva topics. So it's not inexpensive. It's not a, you know, fair, it's not a like, you know, $1 a user a month kind of thing. It's definitely, you're coming in, and depending on the size of your organization, you're going to be investing to be able to acquire these additional licenses. But again, this is also new from Microsoft. I'm sure we're going to see these things evolve a little bit along the way. And let's see, yes, community. If either of us said community, we meant to say connections on that there. Yes. So Viva Connections, yep. That's at least at the very least, the SharePoint home site app. So from your organizational perspective, if you have a SharePoint intranet that you've stood up with communication sites, and you have now anointed it as the home site by running the PowerShell that is required to be able to make a SharePoint communication site a home site, then when Microsoft releases the ability to bring that as an app into Teams, you'll automatically be able to connect that to your SharePoint home site. So at least from what we can tell from the information so far, Viva Connections is going to, at the very least, be tied into that ability to have the home site app in Teams, but likely even more experiences above and beyond that, maybe additional web parts or different experiences, again, all kind of tied into that. So that's what we meant by communities if we said that. The Viva Learning piece, again, we're going to talk more about this as we learn more, but the Viva Learning piece, as far as we can tell, is very much centered around a number of different learning providers, a number from Microsoft for that matter. So if you and your organization are invested in LinkedIn Learning, which is an incredible resource for being able to learn all kinds of things, not just technology for that matter, but all kinds of different things from LinkedIn learning services, then you'll be able to pull that in addition to information and learning from Microsoft Learn, and then a handful of other non-Microsoft providers, I think, Joy, you mentioned as well, coming up too, like Pluralsight and a handful of others, edX.org. So that's really cool because, again, just having that single pane, if you will, to being able to get to your learning content, and you'll also be able to interweave your own custom content into that too. So I'm super interested to see how that's going to work out there. And then we briefly talked about topics really kind of being tied into the whole Project Cortex syntax thing. So let's see what the other questions were that were coming up here. Let's see. It'd be interesting to see Microsoft build an Outlook app into Teams. Seems email is the only thing that's missing. Yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree with that. And I think that has been something that has been at least proposed to Microsoft at times as this was all evolving. If I recall correctly, at least the last time I looked at it, Microsoft's stance was, Outlook serves its purpose and it's obviously email centric. And I've even heard them kind of refer to, although I'm not sure if this is just sort of spin, but they've referred to Outlook as sort of your productivity hub, your personal productivity hub, because it's, tied into tasks, it's tied into your calendar. If you think about managing your email communications, it's sort of centered around a you experience, whereas we all know that Microsoft Teams is promoted as the hub for teams and teamwork. So I think the way that they're looking at it right now is that they serve different purposes, although as we know, there's a lot of overlap. So yeah, definitely don't disagree. I think there's some opportunity maybe of being able to bring in email into Teams, that experience as well too, because then you wouldn't necessarily have to go to Outlook in this case.
But do keep in mind, every channel does get its own email address. So
Sure.
It does make it really easy. If you've got an email from outside that you need to bring into your team, don't forward that email in Outlook. Forward it to your team in Teams.
That's right. That's right.
Win-win.
So there's a question on the timing and availability for Viva. I think we were kind of generally answering that here just now. So again, that's going to be continually updated as we get further along. We're less than a week out from the announcement, but per our understanding right now, Viva Topics is the one piece of Microsoft Viva that you can actually acquire today, either through a trial or through a paid license. And not unclear at the moment on when the other features are going to be released here just yet. Can you share more about the SharePoint homepage app? Is it a coming feature? Yes, absolutely. So this is the home site app in Teams. So again, if you think about Teams and the left rail in Teams where you can switch from chat to your calendar to approvals to Yammer communities, at all of that in your left-hand rail. When this releases, which the last I checked the roadmap, I think it was planned for sometime in the coming month, sometime in March of this calendar year. When that releases and is available, it can be made so where you can add that as an app inside the left rail of Teams. And again, I think the key is, and we probably can break this off into a little bit of its own separate topic to go deeper another time, but it is something what your organization will have to have created or at least configured a home site, SharePoint site within your organization, because that's how it connects the two things together essentially. Is just having the app released to the service is not going to do it in and of itself. You have to have a way to point it to the one and only designated SharePoint home site inside your organization. So again, assuming you have a home site, or if you don't, let's talk more about that, because that's the type of thing that Joy and I certainly do a lot of these days, helping our customers kind of get to that next level, whether you've got an existing SharePoint intranet or whether you're looking to build a net new SharePoint intranet. But how do you take it to that next level and then, of course, make it into a home site so that it can then be tied into Teams when this new capability gets released? But that's, again, kind of the long and short of it is it's got to have those pieces to kind of tie those together.
Bonus, once you designate a site as your home site using that PowerShell script, the mobile app will pick up your corporate branding on that site.
Yes.
So you can push your corporate branding mobile. So, all kinds of little features come along with it. And the connections, Viva connection should start rolling out the first half of this year. Mobile, I've heard, would come along in the summer. So coming soon to a desktop near you.
Outstanding. And then another question here, Viva Learning versus Learning Pathways. It's kind of, you were kind of reading my mind actually, because I was just thinking about that a little bit earlier today, hoping to get a better understanding of that, because we're huge fans of the Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways SharePoint site that can be provisioned into your tenant. If you're not familiar with what that is, hit us up on social media and we're happy to kind of point you to that information. But basically, Microsoft makes a Microsoft 365 Learning portal, which is a great resource for helping your users get a better understanding of how to do various things across all the different Microsoft 365 apps and services. They make this as a template, if you will, that's available. You can install and configure it inside your own environment, inside your own Microsoft 365 tenant, but then you can further customize it so that it has maybe some custom content or other custom information that you really want to get more specific about that for your organization. The best part about it is that the learning content, again, the how to do this in Teams or how to do that in Planner, is actually all automatically tied to Microsoft's services in the internet, where they effectively make that content available. So it's continually being updated and continually being made to have the latest and greatest info. Because again, as we talked about in this one webinar alone, there's so much change, and the change is occurring so regularly that oftentimes you might think to yourself, well, as soon as I created a small video, a training video, or as soon as I went and created a learning page article of some sorts and posted it out there, suddenly now it's changed because something is different about it, or a button has moved, or a way that the feature works is now changed. And that is just more true now than ever before. And so the beauty about the learning pathways is that, again, it's all kind of connected, if you will, to this content. As it gets updated, you have the ability to kind of refresh it all through inside your environment so that you're not having to worry about it being outdated. But back to the question nonetheless is that learning pathways content going to be something that gets kind of tied all together into Viva Learning alongside with LinkedIn Learning and Microsoft Learn content and so forth? And not exactly sure, but going to look into it to see, because I think that would totally make sense to me. It totally makes sense.
I would be shocked if it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can also curate your own stuff too. So perhaps you have a favorite webinar that Richard and I have done. You could point that learning right to it and let us do the hard work for you so you don't have to. Let Microsoft keep up with the documentation instead of you through the learning pathways. It's, a lot of good options there. All right. Now we have come to the end of our webinar. We thank you for joining, for asking all the questions. We love it when you ask questions. We've got a few that we're going to take to social media later today. If you're not currently following Richard and myself on Twitter, we've got our Twitter handles up here on the screen. The QR codes take you to our LinkedIn profiles. I hope you'll engage with us. Find us, hunt us down. We try to make it worth your while on social media by sending out information that can help you, along your journey with Microsoft 365, because it's a wild world to be in these days. We wouldn't be anywhere else. Right.
It's true. Definitely do please connect with us. I see that there's one kind of a follow-up question here that I was wanting to just drop some links into the Q&A, and I will do that here in just a second if you give me a moment.
Perfect.
It's just centered around trying to get some better understanding around the SharePoint home site app. So I found what I'm looking for, and I will post that information out here as well too. Were there some other questions that popped in just yet, or are they the same questions we saw a minute ago? Looks good. Looks good. Okay.
Same.
Okay. Yeah, just dropping a couple of links out here around the SharePoint home site, and then in terms of the home site app that's coming for Teams, there's a roadmap item for it for sure. That we can post from the Microsoft 365 roadmap, but then the third link that I'm putting in the window here is to in the Q&A rather, that's to the tech community announcement about this, or the update I should say about this from when they announced this back at Ignite 2020. So again, if you're interested in getting better understanding about what a SharePoint home site is and why that's important for your organization, and the fact that it adds some kind of superpowers to your site, and then of course how that will tie in ultimately to Viva connections and the SharePoint app in Teams. Again, reach out to us. So we're happy to have some conversations with you about that and give you better understanding about what we're learning as we're doing that. So, okay, fantastic. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great day.